implications and significance. As I worked on this research, my mind often wandered amusedly back to a time in my childhood in the early 2000s that now felt oddly relatable when, by some curious fit of passion, I began telling my peers that I was going to create general artificial intelligence and that this would be my life purpose. Naturally, I was variously ridiculed or told to go away as a result, but I must have been caught by the breeze of a wider fascination in the subject that was already in the air. This was the time of The Matrix, Steven Spielberg's AI artificial intelligence, and Ray Kurzweil's predictions about machine intelligence and the technological singularity. The turn of the millennium had brought with it fears and optimism about the future, with attention increasingly being drawn to the possibility that we were on the cusp of scripting a new machine species into being, whom humanity would either end up worshipping, warring, or merging with. Today, artificial intelligence can recognize the nuances of human emotion and is capable of generating convincing human portraits. It writes witty and insightful prose. It creates artwork fluent in an astonishing array of human visual cultures. It can write its own programs and compose music according to familiar styles and genres. The story of AI has become the most relevant story of our time with respect to the more general quest to script for agency, as natural language as well as computer code increasingly reveals its fundamental role in the generalizability of machine intelligence. It is a story that is rapidly progressing. Throughout my PhD project, and definitely since the publication of this thesis, aspects of my research that had to do with AI were the only aspects that I had to continually keep updating in my writing, presentations, and thinking, all the way to the very last month of this work, and as I say, beyond, just to keep up with the pace of development in this area. And I won't read you all the footnotes, but just to draw attention to this one here, in case you don't know, general artificial intelligence is the kind of artificial intelligence that would be able to apply itself to a wide range of previously unseen tasks and respond appropriately, as opposed to the more specialized AIs that we are familiar with, like facial recognition AI and so on. So, going back to the pace of development in this area, within the past 3 years, as of the publication of this thesis, attitudes towards the promise of general AI have shifted out of the domain of science fiction and are increasingly being taken seriously, particularly as machines began to achieve a level of mastery in domains previously thought to have been well outside the remit of automation. Examples at the time of writing include DeepMind's AI AlphaGo winning against the Go world champion Lee Sedol in 2016, and then NVIDIA and Karas et al.'s imaginary people generator on thispersondoesnotexist.com, and OpenAI's staggering advances in machine creativity that was just coming to prominence when this thesis was published, GPT-3, DALL-E 2, these were all kind of prompt-based generative AI tools that were coming out towards the end of this research. So, going back, particularly as machines began to achieve a level of mastery in domains previously thought to have been well outside of the remit of automation, and as engineers working at companies like Google started getting fired for speaking out publicly about their belief that such machines have already become sentient. Following these developments, our artistic representations of a world cohabited by humans and AI look less and less like the dark, fantastical hinterland of reality in The Matrix, and more like our own world, complete with stylish corporate offices, takeaway coffees, and train commutes, as in Spike Jonze's Her. The fast approaching AI revolution brings the need to better understand the notion of scripting for agency into a state of urgency as human values and the value of the human are thrown into question more acutely than before. Beyond the imminent possibility of replacing the human workforce in areas as diverse as software development, customer service, and illustration, AI forces us to ask, who or what should be the final arbiter of human decision-making and goal-setting? According to Yuval Noah Harari, it used to be the gods, followed by human feelings with the rise of secular capitalism. And even that, while at first sounding democratic and humanistic, turned out to have its own serious problems. What we want turned out to fail us under capitalism in terms of the wiser question, what do we want to want? Soon, however, even deciding on such determining questions as what is in my or our best interest will become increasingly relegated not to gods nor human feelings, but to AI, unless we decide otherwise and take steps towards some as yet unimagined alternative. One response to this lies in the question of how we already think about the nature of human agency before the influence of AI. Why is it that we might find the prospect of living with such overqualified AIs as these so troubling? Does it have something to do with the assumptions that currently underlie our day-to-day understanding of ourselves? Just how do our current intuitions about the workings of such notions as person, self, or agent, the implicit, unconscious schemas we draw upon as representations of our own functioning, inform something so profound as, for example, how we mourn the dead, the lost persons? After all, we must have some idea of what it is we have lost. Such implicit mental models and intuitions that we carry and which guide our perception of the mechanics of self on a daily basis, and this will be discussed more in Chapter 2, have the power to set the terms of our most consequential communal negotiations about, for example, politics of identity and social agency, sovereignty, disenfranchisement, cultural appropriation, and the AI alignment problem. With the rise in essentialist categorizations of human beings, phobia toward all manner of categorical others, and deteriorating mental health, making art that reintroduces doubt into our most basic assumptions about the mechanics of self could offer tools to rethink the grounds for societal politics through a politics of self. In particular, the intuition that it is a contradiction in terms to script for agency is indicative of the underlying assumption that the self must in some way be unscripted, spontaneous, and indeterminate to qualify as an autonomous agent. This intuition alone brings with it a cascade of others. It can foster the assumption that agency must be attributed to an essential source within each individual, and in turn promote hard categorizations of individuals as being essentially this or that way. Identity can be unforgiving in such a social climate. One is not allowed to change, adapt, or experiment with one's self-presentation because the idea that identity can be fluid does not fit the essentialist ideological paradigm of self within which we currently live. Betrayal becomes a common point of conflict, as when a person in a formerly same-sex relationship enters a heterosexual relationship and finds themselves suddenly excluded from the LGBT plus groups they used to feel at home in, or when someone who discovers a new piece of family history finds themselves suddenly racially ostracized and accused of passing. Since contradicting or changing social allegiances should not be possible within such a paradigm, and it can only spell duplicity or fraud. This logic of the fixity of identity can extend beyond the individual and map onto attitudes towards the character of entire groups or nations, entrenching impressions that become difficult to change. Pursuing a study of the notion of scripting for agency allows us to open up these fundamental models and intuitions about agency to question, thus helping to keep alive the chance to discover human values and the value of the human in an age of political divisiveness and rapidly maturing artificial intelligence.